2022 NFL Draft featured a couple of quarterbacks. Guys such as Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, and Matt Corral were all supposed to be guys who could be franchise quarterbacks in the NFL, but as it turns out, scouts were not very high on this year's quarterback class, and only one of them was taken in the first round. What if I told you that out of those 4 guys, I don't think any of them will be the best quarterback from this class? I think it's going to be the guy who was taken in the 5th round. In today's video, we're going to talk about who this guy is, why he has an opportunity to be an NFL star, and why he'll be better than the other 5 quarterbacks drafted before him. So, there's not much more explaining to this, but let's just go ahead and get started with today's video. So you're probably wondering who the subject of today's video is, and it is none other than Sam Howell. Yes, the North Carolina quarterback who at one point was supposed to be the #1 overall pick. But in order to understand why Sam Howell has the opportunity to be the best quarterback, we first need to go back in time. Howell was born in the town of Sun Valley, North Carolina, so he grew up during the John Bunting and Butch Davis eras of North Carolina football. That was plagued by mediocrity and scandal, and eventually Howell grew into a star quarterback from a young age. While at Sun Valley High School, he'd go on to pass for 3,200 yards and 36 touchdowns as a senior, but he already had decided where he was going to go by that time. The previous April, he had committed to head coach Willie Taggart and decided he was going to go to Florida State. At the time, North Carolina was completely out of the picture. That was until Mack Brown decided to take over UNC. One of the first things Mack did was immediately drive to Sun Valley to talk to Sam, and according to Sam's father, it wasn't love at first sight, but he would grow on him, and Florida State would make it easy to switch. Walt Bell was the guy that he had committed to at Florida State, but he decided to take the head coaching job at UMass, so now he had a real reason to decommit, and when signing day came along, Howell was going to choose between the Carolina Blue hat and the Seminoles hat. Add in the fact that his father wanted him to be closer to home, and Howell decided to commit to UNC. He'd have the opportunity to compete right away, play close to home, and play for a legendary head coach in Mack Brown. That is what he would do, as he picked the North Carolina hat, and this was a big loss for the Seminoles. According to 24/7 Sports, Sam was a 4-star recruit, the #3 dual-threat quarterback, and the #93 overall player in the class of 2019. Something else that's worth noting is that Anthony Boone, the former Duke quarterback star, was his quarterback trainer. As a freshman in 2019, Howell would end up winning the starting job, and he took over immediately. He threw for 3,641 yards with 38 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and he almost beat Clemson as a true freshman. He led North Carolina to a bowl game, and he was named a freshman All-American, and all of a sudden, this guy was a hot name for the 2022 NFL Draft. Yes, that was 2 years away, but Howell would once again have a big sophomore year, which would lead many to believe he could be the first quarterback taken. He threw for 3,586 yards and 30 touchdowns as a sophomore, but it was a shortened season. One thing that is worth noting is he had 4 incredible weapons. De'Ami Brown and Daz Newsome were both drafted into the NFL, and Michael Carter and Javonte Williams could both catch the ball out of the backfield and were tremendous running backs. No one knew how big of an impact these guys would have on him, as Howell was a Heisman contender going into 2021, and UNC was a dark horse playoff contender. They would miss him mightily, as his only 2 real weapons were Ty Chandler and Josh Downs. After a bad Week 1 performance against Virginia Tech, Howell's Heisman campaign quickly came to an end, and North Carolina ended up finishing with a losing record. He threw for 3,056 yards with a career-low 29 touchdowns and a career-high 9 interceptions. How much of that was on Howell and how much of that was on the lack of talent, that I can't really answer, but it did cause scouts to be lower on him, and he would slide tremendously going into the 2022 NFL Draft. There was a debate between Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, and Matt Corral for that #1 quarterback spot, and all of a sudden Howell is no longer being mentioned in those conversations. Because of that, he'd end up sliding in the 2022 NFL Draft, as he was taken in the 5th round, number 144th overall, by the Washington Commanders. I'm still not used to saying that name. Many thought he'd be a 2nd or 3rd round pick, so the fact that he slid all the way to the 5th round was pretty shocking. Even Bailey Zappi was taken higher, as the Patriots grabbed him in the 4th round. Obviously, Matt Corral went to the Panthers, Malik Willis went to the Titans, Ridder went to the Falcons, and Pickett went to the Steelers. So what's to say that Howell's going to be better than these other 5? Well, let's talk about it. Kenny Pickett probably has the best opportunity of those 5 to be great, as he'll likely be the starter from day 1, and he has a lot of potential. Some are worried about his hand size, but I'm actually way more worried about the fact that he only had 1 good year, and he's not super overly athletic, and is already pretty old. I'm not saying Pickett will be a bust, but I'm not quite sure his ceiling is that high. Desmond Ridder is a guy who I thought was a great college quarterback, but I don't know if he's ever going to get an opportunity with the Falcons, as they're likely going to take a quarterback in next year's draft with a higher pick. The Titans are in the same boat, where Malik Willis is definitely a high-ceiling project player, but they'll likely take a different guy as well. Finally, you have the Panthers, who you know are also looking for a quarterback, but I'm concerned about Corral's height and his transition to an NFL system. Zappe, of course, is stuck behind Mac Jones, so unless Mac gets a lot worse, Zappe will likely not play there. That leaves me with Howell. Right now, the Commanders' quarterback is none other than Carson Wentz, and as a Colts fan, he's really not that good. I'm not an NFL scout by any means, but it seems like Wentz has lost a lot of the talent he used to have, and especially has lost a lot of that confidence. I think by about midway through the season, Howell may get an opportunity to play. Howell's the kind of guy who actually put up numbers all 3 years in college, has a good arm, is decently mobile, and is extremely hard-working. He may not have a higher ceiling than some of the other players, but Howell is good enough at everything that if he got the chance, he could be a Dak Prescott kind of player and be a late-round steal. While many people are very skeptical of Howell, I've always been a firm believer in his talents, and I watched him all 3 years at North Carolina, and I personally think he's going to be fine, and if he gets an opportunity to ever play or start, I think he could be a steal. But what the heck do I know? And be sure to give me your opinion down below. Who will be the best quarterback from the 2022 draft class? What do you think of Sam Howell's NFL future? And what topic or player should I take a look at next? Be sure to let me know down below, smash that like button if you want to support today's video, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.